My position is that AI is a great tool. I believe one of its best use cases, as we've already discussed, is in content creation. Ideation. Ideation is a big part of writing content, coming up with topics, articles, that kind of thing. So I believe that that's one of the primary reasons to use it, is because it's a great tool and it will drive efficiency to your process.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have my good friend Kris Jones with us today. Kris is a serial entrepreneur, author, and investor. His books include Search Engine Optimization, All-in-One for Dummies, and Search Engine Optimization Visual Blueprint. He has sold over 100,000 books. Kris founded the affiliate network Pepperjam, which he sold to eBay. He's founder and CEO of SEO. He's been published in Inc., Forbes, Fast Company, Amex Open, among others, and he was previously guest, episode 17, where we geeked out on affiliate marketing way back in the day. Mm-hmm. This time we'll be geeking out on SEO and AI, local marketing, personal development, mission-driven marketing, life purpose, all sorts of awesome stuff. So Kris, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, man. It's great to be back. Did you catch the year? That had to be a good, 5-10 years ago?
Oh, the year of your interview was 2016. If you can believe it.
Wow. 8 years ago.
Yeah. Or wait a second. I think it might have actually been 2015. No, 2016. Yeah. Wow. I know.
Yeah. And
time flies.
I'm super stoked to be here. We've known each other for, we didn't talk about this before we went live, but it's got to be 15, 20 years. Because I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, was it through Jeremy Shoemaker at one of his events, or did we meet elsewhere?
Probably at Jeremy's elite retreat. Yeah, might have been even earlier than that, but certainly we would have spoken at elite retreat. Yeah,
which we would then, identify when that was to know how far it goes. But it was at least 15 or 20 years. So yeah, let's geek out. What was the name of your original agency?
Net Concepts. And so when I sold in 2010. They canceled the trademark and then didn't end up using the name. They gave me back the domain, netconcepts.com, and I sat on it for 10 years. Didn't even update the website at all. And then I realized, that's a shame. This name actually has really good value. And so I resurrected it. And so now my agency isn't just Stephan Spencer. Mm-hmm. It's Net Concepts again.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So let's talk about your storied background in SEO and starting up all these different companies and selling some of them. And some of them, didn't end up working out, but many of them did. Give us a bit of a backgrounder.
So this is my 26th year in growth marketing. I got it by starting a family business while I was in graduate school at Villanova University outside of Philadelphia. It was a company we called Pepperjam. It was based on a product my grandmother made for us. I say us, my brother and my sister and I, when we were kids, and started out building the website, learning HTML. Once I built the website, I was like, I got to generate traffic. And I just self-taught on search engine optimization. I stumbled upon the industry of affiliate marketing. And that really set sail on this 20 plus year career. Pepperjam would go on to become one of the bigger agencies and later affiliate networks. And as you noted, I sold that in 2009. 2010, I started an investment fund called KBJ Capital. And you know what? I don't know. I've lost track. I've made, 40 to 50 investments. So over that period of time, which was about 12 to 14 years of investing, I've had incredible opportunities. I currently work with, and I've worked with celebrities, professional athletes, to try to create a bridge, if you will, between Hollywood and sort of Silicon Valley or, tech, if you will. And so I've developed some thought leadership on that as well. And I've been speaking at quite a number of the tech shows in North America. So, you fast forward to today. You already mentioned that I've written some books and published some articles. in 2019, I made one of the boldest moves of my entire career. I bought the corner block of the downtown city where I work and turned it into a growth stage accelerator where my investment company is. I have legal support, accounting support, marketing support for the tenants in my building. And I go in every day and in some cases, we're just talking. Other cases, I'm helping them solve problems. So here I am today. By the way, one of the fifth floor of the building is an agency that I founded in 2014 called LSEO.com. And that was the continuation of my passion for, building and scaling businesses through search engine optimization, paid ads, affiliate marketing.
Yeah. And you're still running LSEO, right? You're the CEO.
I am. And we're in our 10th year. The interesting thing is that for the previous 9 years, I've really been more of a strategist, more of an investor kind of advisor than an operator. And this year I came back in as an operator. And the short of it is that when I founded LSEO in 2014, I actually founded it as a technology company. I was trying to solve sort of do-it-yourself SEO for small businesses. But because of really my success as an investor, I was spreading myself thin across different businesses. So I had hired someone to operate the company and he had more of a preference for marketing services and agency life. And I just supported him. And he actually was very successful in building that company, leveraging my brand and my background and also his and the team he built. But now I'm back in the saddle. And the reason I'm back in the saddle is because of the reason I founded LSEO in the first place. And that's to build technology. It's a passion of mine. And so we're working on a bunch of stuff, particularly in the AI space that we could chat about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you most excited about that you're building right now?
What's interesting is that we're building in the AI space. I acquired the domain DIYSEO.ai. And I just spoke on SEO recently at the PubCon event that was held in Las Vegas. And up to this point, the industry is so nascent, at least as it relates to the consumer application of AI. And so I only really feel like I've been engaging with AI on a daily basis for a little over a year, right? So while we're actively building technology in the AI space, I truly don't know what is going to end up being like the killer feature or the killer solution, because I think it's so nascent. There's so many companies competing for people's AI dollars. And so I don't know, but I'm in a fortunate position to be able to speculate and build MVPs and put them in front of users and get feedback. And that's how I've been successful at building technology in the past, is really getting feedback from users and doing that. So
what is DIY SEO? What's the value proposition for that?
Being honest with you, the thing that I think really separates good AI from bad AI is summed up by this sentence: your output is only as good as your input. So one of the things I've learned in playing with AI, every day for hours for over a year, is that prompting, and prompt engineering and understanding the AI's flaws through prompting, more effective prompting, is at least one of the layers, the backdrop, if you will, that will power DIY SEO.ai. And so take that for what it is. We've been testing different prompts and looking at the output and how that output ranks on Google, how people engage with it, and thinking through also how to just leverage AI in general to enhance content. And I could share in a second why I feel that's important. But so we'd be looking for the instances where AI makes the most sense for a do-it-yourself SEOer. And then we would enhance that experience for them by helping to drive efficiency or facilitate that process. So instead of it being just a chatbot where it's a blank page, a blank screen, and then it's up to them to be able to walk the AI through what it is that they want, the outputs that they want, we want to facilitate that. We want to do that, as effectively. We want to get that out into the market as soon as possible, solely because, there's so much competition. But at the same time, we want the product, to your question, to solve a problem. And I think the problem is lots of inexperienced users not knowing the control that they have over the commands and the output that they could get. I was just going to say, because I stayed at 30,000 feet there, content creation is certainly a primary use case for SEO. But most recently, with some of the updates that Google has made, that would suggest that the content that's being created with AI needs to be as good or better than a human could do that. And I fundamentally believe that the human is very disadvantaged, at least as it relates to certain types of content, just to hold the repository of knowledge that an LLM can versus a human. But so once there's an understanding of that, right? So content's the primary thing. We want to make that as simple as possible for people to create really good SEO content that Google will like and will rank. But when you go through that process, there are things like keyword discovery. There are things like creating a content calendar, creating or enhancing your website structure. That's actually one of the things that occurred to me, was just how limited we were before AI based on resources. There just wasn't enough resources to build that content team that pretty much every business across America, wanted to build, because it took time. And so with the efficiency of being able to access all of that information and put it together in the form of content, I do think that content creation is the main use case. There are a lot of other less important features that are nice to have, but being able to create an engine that spits out SEO content that Google's okay with, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Google made some announcements recently about how AI content is not okay. So what's your take on that, and what should our listener do to utilize AI in a way that doesn't go against Google guidelines, but is also adding value to the user and to their SEO?
Yeah, I would say that we're still the SEO community is still trying to figure out exactly what Google was attempting to slap or to remove from it seems like in almost all instances, it was really egregious use, scaled use, if you will, of AI without the sort of necessary editing and humanization and usefulness approach to the content. Reminds me a little bit of what happened with Demand Media, who I'm sure you remember. They did like eHow and a bunch of other content sites, call it a decade ago, and they built $1 billion+ company. I'll share this here. When they were going public, I got called from an investment banking firm, and they asked me if I would go under retainer and advise them. I didn't know what it was, went under NDA with them, and it was on Demand Media. They were speculating whether or not the investment was just too risky because of Google's, potential algorithm changes. So I made money on that because I knew I was going to have to do some, research and provide them with examples. My advice to that investment banking firm was that the approach that Demand Media was taking was highly likely at some point to be judged unfavorably by Google. My understanding is when they reached back out, they had said that I was right, because that, they ended up going public and then down. But so for your users, or for not your users, but for your listeners and folks watching, my position is that AI is a great tool. I believe one of its best use cases, as we've already discussed, is in content creation. Ideation is a big part of writing content, coming up with topics, articles, that kind of thing. So I believe that that's one of the primary reasons to use it, is because it's a great tool and it will drive efficiency to your process. And then the other thing I would say is the more specific you could be with the AI about what it is that you want to write, the greater likelihood that the output will be what Google will deem as favorable. And then finally, once they leverage AI as a tool to write content, making sure that there is an editorial process to, I'm using the word humanize, but certainly demachinize, if that's a word, some of the output that you get from AI, simply because AI has really an unlimited repository of knowledge. It's a machine, and it sort of hiccups or hallucinates. And for a whole ton of reasons, you don't want that footprint left on any content that you publish on your website.
Yeah. So what's an example of a campaign or cornerstone content piece that was generated mostly or maybe solely with AI that you're able to speak of? Maybe you're under NDA and can't talk about many of them, but something you can.
Yeah, I will. And I'll, so it's a client in the healthcare space. What they do is they provide nursing access to remote nurses to help people with chronic care management. So we used AI as a tool to build a page on their website called the Ultimate Guide to CCM, or chronic care management, right? Because at the end of the day, that's their primary service. So we debated whether or not we targeted the homepage or whether or not we created this guide and targeted the guide. But the guide is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 words of content. But we used it in pieces to identify and create executive summaries, and then later full pieces of content on each of the applications of CCM. So chronic care management for healthcare providers, chronic care management for the patients, this kind of thing. And it was a project that took about a month, not full time, but from it, we produced the ultimate guide, and we haven't published them all yet, but 30 supporting pieces of what I call artery content. These all point back into that core ultimate guide. So this client, who had already kind of, and I was certainly not super competitive, is now competing page one for these keywords. And so the reason I gave that example is because we did not use AI to write that entire guide. I mean, we took information from different sources, and it was this sort of thoughtful but hodgepodge of different information that we were able to put into a piece of content that would have taken me, oh boy, I don't even know. I mean, the amount of resources, the cost to the client, maybe it cost the client maybe a couple $1,000 if I were to, just think about it as like a billable time. With the AI assistant, without it, it probably could have been $30,000 to $50,000. Pretty unbelievable use case of how, in this case, an agency could work with its client collaboratively, leveraging AI to drive efficiency into process of content construction. And there's no, in terms of the footprints that I referenced earlier, we owned the content through that process and provided proper editorial and human beings looking at it that were experts. And so far we're getting really great results. But that's not the short approach that I think Google, to the point you made about the updates they made recently. I don't believe that Google's trying to stop me or my agency from doing what we did. They're trying to stop the person that purchased a tool that allowed them to produce 1,000 pieces of content, and they publish it on a domain that they just acquired to publish on. It's not too difficult when you do things that way, candidly, to make mistakes and to leave a trace such that Google could, through the machine learning, quickly identify that this is not normal behavior.
Yeah. So what are some of the footprints that you've seen in AI generated content that won't pass Google's sniff test?
So this is only, because we don't know this, but people often refer to the sort of dehuman or non-human introductions and conclusions. For whatever the reason, it likes to use words that anyone would say, wow, good job, good use of. Nothing came to my head when I just thought there. People that are watching this are like, oh, what about this word or that word? So they know what words I mean. And then long run-ons in terms of conclusions. AI, what needs to be avoided, and you have to be very careful about, is when you ask AI to write something, not giving it parameters for length. And one other tip would be, if a piece of content that you're looking to create is over, I would say 750 words, I'd encourage you to prompt a request to AI to write an outline. And in that outline, ask them to estimate the word count per section. The nice thing about that as your output is that you could review the outline and you could modify it if you wanted to. You could add to it if you wanted to. And if you decide not to do either one of those things, at least you then have control over the output not being sort of a long hallucination run on. And so what I would do once you have the outline is, depending on the length of the content, I wouldn't ask for output more than 500 to 750 words. Make sure it's tight. Make sure that the sections are using the type of language, or the keywords actually is another important part of writing, good SEO content, but making sure that the target keywords for that page are in some of the subheadings and whatnot. So there's some of it's obvious, some of it isn't, to me. I mean, I think other people probably have a better eye for it than I do. I'm a writer. I'm not really an editor. When I wrote the books that you mentioned earlier, it's so interesting. And so for anyone that hasn't written a book, you'll get all the credit once it's published, but there's a huge team, depending if you write for a major publisher, like Stephan wrote for O'Reilly, I've written for Wiley. These publishers give you a team of editors, from copy editors and picture editors and all this stuff. So my point there, though, is that it's if someone is going to think about publishing a book, I think it's important to know that you're going to have a lot of support in doing it.
Yeah, I was curious as to which phrases and words tend to get overused by generative AI, and I turned to Google for that and got words like delve, unlock, ensure. For example, AI enables us to delve into complex data patterns, unlock valuable customer insights, and ensure that marketing strategies are both highly targeted and optimally effective. That sounds like AI.
Yeah, no, but I kind of write like that. But yeah, I mean, probably not a good thing. But that, I think, was my point. Then the editors, I think I do write pretty robotic. I went to law school too. Like, if there is one takeaway, like one skill that is really taught in law school, it's to be concise. Period. That's it. Because if you don't, you're not gonna do well on any of the essays. So anyway, so I've learned how to be a writer. But the truth is, I benefit from having the editorial team to make sure that my content doesn't read like a robot wrote it.
Yeah, for sure. So we need to be, all of us, very aware of the Google algorithm that is doing AI detection to see if we're using an AI to write our content. Certain phrases and words will be overused or end up getting into the content that are not typical if they're written by a human. So for example, overuse of those words that I gave earlier, but also phrases like can lead to, remember the key, this could involve, here are several. Those are other phrases that generative AI such as ChatGPT tend to overuse. Interesting times. We got, Tony Robbins has this great saying where he says, it's not that we're trying to get rid of our problems. We're trying to have higher quality problems. This is a high quality problem.
It definitely is. And sometimes I think when there's a headline, there's a tendency to try to think how it applies to you or work that you're doing. And I think that's fine. But then you sort of have to step back and say, you've already mentioned it earlier when we were chatting about quality. What is it that Google really wants, right? So do they really want to detect between AI content and content written by a really poor writer? Or a great writer? Or is it what they really want to make sure is that the content, the answers to the questions, the queries that are typed into the search engine present the most relevant and useful results to the user. And it's easy. I see a lot of people in our community, in the SEO community, kind of picking sides, almost like our political climate these days. Like, you got to be this or that. And if you're this or that, you best better be the most extreme versions of this or that. Similarly, some of the SEOs are like, AI is terrible for the SEO space. I'm not on that side. I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am an SEO. I do love SEO. I love the idea of thinking through how to help my clients, rank higher on Google. But the truth is, I see it more as a very practical tool. Anything that drives efficiency into process, to me, is, I don't know, as an entrepreneur, that's really how you build successful businesses. So, at the same time, you have to know the risk. If you gamble and you go and you have a strict rule of $250 and that's within your mean and you stay within that, you're probably going to be fine. I don't know. That's your personal choice. But if you do the extreme of that, where 250 is like your means and you're taking cash advances, it's probably not going to be a great outcome. So it's a tool, and the people that are really trying to abuse it are the ones that I believe Google is going to identify. So I don't want people to feel fear using AI to create content. And my argument for it is that I believe that the repository of knowledge that AI provides us access to through a prompt is extraordinary, and humans aren't really capable of storing so much information. So we shouldn't necessarily be afraid of it, that somehow it's going to put us in the doghouse with Google. I think we should be using it. Everyone should be using it to drive efficiency into their business, and to, never said lower your standards. Make sure that you're putting out content that is consistent with answering the queries that people are typing into Google.
So how is AI going to change, or already changing, local marketing, like for the mom and pop, the local dry cleaner and plumber?
It's a great question. So if you're a landlord, you always put your agreements on napkins. AI is actually a great tool for legal documents. Just recently, I actually didn't have to use AI, but I was going to use it as a solution. Turns out that by default, WordPress provides you with a template privacy policy. But the truth is, you could whip up a privacy policy, fairly quickly. Again, remember, your output is only as good as your input. So make sure that when you prompt AI, that you're clear and specific on what it's going to be used for, that kind of thing. Since I'm building the DIYSEO.ai site, I'm just a big believer that it could be used for most of the basic SEO functions. I were just talking about pricing yesterday. This is a tool that's going to probably be maybe as low as $25 a month, and maybe it could go up to an enterprise level if necessary. But the examples that I was giving earlier about some of the things that we want to do with our technology could be done through proper prompting and planning by all of the folks that you just mentioned, the local plumbers, and I believe that a lot of them are using it. I feel like, has there ever been in our lifetime such quick adoption, which to me feels that it's gone beyond just the techies, geeks, or the nerds, and it's an accessible tool for anyone. So I actually think they are using it, but hopefully they're not afraid of it. They shouldn't be afraid of it. It's a tool.
What do you think of Peter Diamandis's quote? Peter Diamandis is the founder of Abundance 360 and author of Bold and The Future is Faster Than We Think. He said that by the end of this decade, there will be two kinds of businesses that are using AI at their core, and businesses that are out of business.
Yeah, I mean, I believe I saw Peter speak at one of the Tony shows years ago, and I have followed him since. He's unbelievable. He's behind like the X Prize and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, he was the founder of the X Prize.
So yeah, I mean, he's looking at just the practicality of it being a tool to the point I was making earlier, just on the brain power, if you will, the capacity to store so much knowledge and retrieve it in more of a language model than a query result type of output is profound. And I think that your question also gets at maybe how search changes, how Google changes over these next 5 to 10 years. But I actually agree with Peter. I stood on the sidelines for a bunch of tech industries, just my subjective opinion. I kind of stayed on the sidelines of VR. I stayed on the sidelines, and this is obviously I have not aged well on this one, but I stayed on the sidelines of crypto. I know, it's like, oh God, Kris just lost all of his credibility. Hold on. I owned I think about it a decent amount because I just think it's so funny. I owned 25 Bitcoin, which at the time was worth $25,000. And the damn thing went up to $50,000 within 90 days back in the day, and pigs get slaughtered. So I sold it. That same Bitcoin. And I sold it. I didn't need the money. I just sold it because I thought it would be stupid not to sell it. That would be worth, millions of dollars. But you know what? I've had opportunities to make lots of money. My increase in happiness and among other things, at best was flat to incrementally up or down. So I'm not fishing for money. I'm fishing for impact, fishing for, opportunities just to be part of the conversation, try to help people think through things. So, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, I agree with Peter. There's no doubt in my mind that this is the biggest thing in tech that universally will elevate the productivity of people and businesses globally.
It's going to be a interesting time to be alive for sure. Do you have to wrap up now, or do we have, let's say, 5-10 more minutes?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So let's talk about this whole mission, fishing for impact sort of thing, and your quest to improve yourself and study personal development, spirituality, all that sort of stuff. I'm curious to hear, first of all, what are some of the most impactful books and courses and seminars and speakers that you want to highlight for our listener?
Yeah, I mean, we should schedule a 2-hour for this one, and I know that the output would be pretty incredible. Grew up a single mom, very low income, government assistance. But I grew up with a mom who was an amazing role model and who really instilled in me that I could be anybody. When I was 14, so my mom had a huge impact. She was my self-fulfilling prophecy to the person that I've become. But when I was a teenager, I think I was an early mature. My mom got sick. It was a pretty rough, childhood and teenage years, at least as it relates to some of the things that were happening in my life at that age. So at 14, a friend, one of my best friends, Brian Drew, his dad, Dr. Drew, a dentist from here in northeastern Pennsylvania, walked into the bedroom. It was one summer. We were off on break. And he said to Brian and I, he was holding Tony Robbins' Personal Power One, that I think it was on cassette because I was 14 years old. And so this is 30 plus years ago. But I think it was cassettes. But anyway, he said, you guys should really check this out. It's made a really big difference in my life. So I would later ask Brian if I could take those tapes home. I've reflected on this so many times. I've told this story. I gave a commencement address at my undergraduate alma mater, Penn State, and I told the whole story of how it all went down. But I took the tapes home, and I'm not going to pretend that every single one of them, seemed to just stick with me. It seemed over my head in some respects, but it seemed so right. It seemed so purposeful. And the one thing that Tony had said is that he said, you have everything that you need within you right now to take the first step towards whatever it is that you want, wherever it is that you want to go. And I just rewinded it, listened to that, rewinded it, listened to it. And as in the subsequent tapes, it seemed like all of his teachings were around this idea that all of us as humans have this sort of untapped potential, this extraordinary potential to achieve, to contribute, etc. And so that's it. And from 14 on, personal and professional development became, a huge part of my identity. So through my undergraduate years, I was a super high achiever just simply because I was demonstrating to myself exactly what Tony taught me, which is that we all have this incredible personal power. And so, that would lead to so many different recognitions and experiences. And just, if you will, sort of, material success would come. And I would marry the woman of my dreams and have 3 amazing kids and live in a beautiful home and own successful businesses and write books. And it was crazy that those initial sparks led me on this journey. So many books. When I was a teenager, I read a book called The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield.
Yep.
Man, I still think that is one of the most impactful books a teenager could read. Man, a lot of people will spend their whole entire life, never really having a connection to something greater than themselves. And I felt like that book at least opened my mind to this universality of energy and the reality around coincidences and when these things happen and what happens if you create some self-awareness around them or pursue them. It could dramatically change your life. So Celestine Prophecy was huge. Martin Seligman is a psychologist from the University of Pennsylvania. In the early 80s, by the way, when I went to Penn State and Villanova, I studied psychology before I went to law school. So I always have kind of really been interested in psychology. Martin Seligman is a psychologist from the University of Pennsylvania. Early 80s, he was the president of the American Psychological Association. And he would later kind of be like a pioneer founding father of positive psychology, which is really came out of humanistic psychology. And there's just so much good content out there by Seligman and some of his disciples and some of his peers on positive psychology. The other sort of impact that came into my life was going to personal development shows, conferences. The one that I believe I've been to 14, 15 times at this point is Tony Robbins again. Unlimited Power, Life Mastery, Wealth Mastery, Business Mastery, Date with Destiny. He had a few other little shows here and there. But what I'll say, and I know people that follow you know that this has been a big part of your career and you've branched out into so many different areas. But what I'll say to someone who's never been to one of those types of shows is that event could be what ultimately wakes up within you this potential that I was referring to earlier, or helps you reflect on, or helps you through a tough time, or through things happen, right, to all of us, and how we deal with them dramatically impacts who we become. So Tony I actually think going to a live show when you're going through something tough is probably some good advice, although there's a lot of different ways of going about that. So I could just ramble because it's been my life. It's what's so funny is that this is what I am most passionate about. I just think it's so cool to let other people know that there is something brilliant within them. There's a talent that they have that's extraordinary, that's breathtaking. And part of my success has allowed me to have these conversations with kids, with both high school kids and college kids. There's an organization here, and I believe it's national, but it's called Junior Achievement. Mm-hmm. And they create these opportunities for kids to kind of like role play, what it would be like to be a banker, an investment banker, an entrepreneur, or whatever. And a lot of the books that I've read and the events that I've gone to and the work that I've done on personal and professional development sort of come out in me when I'm standing in front of these kids. And it just feels so aligned and so purposeful when I'm doing that. And so a lot of my career has been spent in, in mentoring and coaching and really just, just to be honest, trying to bring the best out, trying to give people support so that they have the best crack at success. I think at the end of the day, if there is a universal sort of commonality among all people, is that, we're driven to improve. We're driven to, you know, um, live a life where we feel like, we're putting a little bit more into today than we did yesterday, and we're improving in some way. Um, if you don't grow, you die. So, that's a ramble. You could see behind me here, I'm actually working from my home office. I have, it's like saying to a parent who has 6 kids, you don't want to start complaining about your 3 kids because they're going to say, oh, I've read a lot of books. Part of this whole personal professional development journey is sort of at least 1 to 2 books a month. And that's not a lot. I know there are people that my wife could consume 2 books in a week. And I'm just like, the types of books that I read, often I'm writing in them in the margins and stuff. So there's just so many books.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you for being so motivated to driven to improve yourself and to know we all stand on the shoulders of giants. So trying to figure this out on your own is a lot harder than just picking up some books and going to some seminars and learning from others who have already figured some things out.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you can become anybody that you would like to, or if you'd like to improve yourself. It's been done, and, it could be done again. But it's not so much being a judge of people who are moving faster than others, but just being around people. One of the things I learned about going to events, being around people that just, just want to live life to the fullest, and want to sort of always improve. So yeah. It's one of those things that you and I for sure have connected on for many, many years. I remember, had to be a long time ago, 15 years ago, I was at one of the Tony shows and I looked across the room and there you were sitting up in the front row, which you did for many years,
Yeah. I did the Platinum Partnership thing. Mm-hmm. Yep. But of course, there's more than just Tony Robbins. There's, like I said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. So they're amazing, amazing folks. From Zig Ziglar to Byron Katie, Napoleon Hill, Florence Scovel Shinn, Susan Jeffers. Yeah.
Did you recommend that book to me from Susan Jeffers?
I did. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
You're unbelievable. You're one of the best human beings I know. You are. You've made some of the best recommendations, most sincere, most aligned, most impactful of any friend that I've ever had. I really appreciate that. And it's kind of like, we've been on a journey together, at least on that part of our lives. I believe you've invested so much more. I admire, the investment that you've made in that side of your life. And, like I said to you before we went live, it's just, I can't wait for the future to see where that goes, where I could learn more from you, maybe contribute in some ways. And I feel like you challenge me, which is what a great mentor, a great, sort of friend, does when the other friend is open to it, and is interested in it. So thank you. And when you do these podcasts, I think it's you and I have very similar backgrounds in that we've lived in the agency world and helping clients, advising those clients. But on the other hand, there's this part of you and I that we were just kind of talking about right here. I had said 2 hours. We could probably wrap for 8 hours, and I think we would still have listeners at the end, because you and I have gone deep into the power of unlocking parts of ourselves that are often just never sort of fulfilled, never really come to light. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate you. You're a light in the world.
Thanks, man.
So I know we're out of time. if our listener wants to learn from you more, work with LSEO, and get some profound results, where should we send them to?
So, of course, lseo.com. I'm very active on social media. LinkedIn's one of those places. If we do connect on there, make sure that you say that you listened to this podcast, and other social media channels. I think my Instagram, my Twitter is Kris Jones com with a K, Kris, Kris Jones com. And then my Instagram is KBJ Capital, which is my investment firm. I share mostly stuff about my family, and I get to travel and I get to share, with people, what I'm doing. It's very rare that I don't have an inclination to want to share, because it's possible that I could inspire. I want to share this. I don't know why I'm going to share this, but so I was at a Tony event in December, and someone reached out to me.
Date with Destiny?
This was Date with Destiny in Palm Beach, Florida. And someone reached out to me who I never recall meeting personally, but his name, Austin Hauser, was very familiar to me just because of social media. He said, I want to talk to you. Sure, man, dude, great. I'd love to meet you, put name to face. He came up to me and told me that the reason he was at Tony Robbins was because of me. He told me, Kris, over all these years I followed you, and he told me how we originally connected, 10 years ago at a business plan competition. I was a judge. But he said he's been following my career, and he said, you always spoke so favorably about Tony. And last year, it was about 18 months prior, which was almost unbelievable. He said, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I was like, okay. And he said they did emergency surgery, and he said, and he showed me and he talked. I actually thought he was speaking perfectly, et cetera, but he apologized and he said, there's been some atrophy and he said, so the surgery was a success, no trace of cancer, but I was going through a tough time, the impact that it had on my family. And he said, I thought back to how you were willing to share the positive experiences you had. One other thing was, and he said, now I'm a platinum partner. It's great, right? So if there's magic in this world, it happens when we don't intend it, but it's a byproduct of our willingness to be open and to contribute and to believe in ourselves and our capacity to have impact.
I believe there's an additional ingredient that if you have the intention to deliver God's miracles, then the without a doubt signs and the coincidences and the synchronicities and these, chance one in a trillion sort of opportunities will present themselves over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I can't wait to experience that, because there is some divineness or divinity in that, in exactly what I shared and what you reflected on as well. There's something going on there that could only be considered cosmic or magical or spiritual or whatever people want to associate with it. There's something going on there. So,
yeah.
But dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You got to bring me back in another 8 years.
Yeah, sooner than that, but yes. Thank you, Kris. Thank you, listener. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.